Welcome to Wisconsin in Focus. I'm Bruce Walker, Great Lakes Regional Editor for the Center Square. Joining me today to talk about Wisconsin's results from Tuesday's election is Wisconsin correspondent Benjamin Yount. Tell me, it was good news for liberals with the landslide and the Supreme Court election. Did that come as a surprise to anyone?
That Janet Protasiewicz, the liberal candidate for Supreme Court, won was absolutely not a surprise. That she won big wasn't much of a surprise. That she won by a little over 10 points, it was shocking, but again, not surprising. This was the most watched Supreme Court race in the country. This is the now most expensive Supreme Court race in the country's history. And this was the marquee race in Wisconsin. This was the race that everybody turned out for. And given what we saw last November, with the kind of voter turnout that Democrats had in Dane County, with the messaging, with the machinery of the Wisconsin Democratic Party's voter outreach, no one could be surprised by this. Again, the numbers may seem a little shocking, but absolutely no one should be surprised with how easily Janet Protasiewicz won the race for Wisconsin Supreme Court.
Well, right. And her opponent was Dan Kelly, and not his first loss.
No, this is his second loss in a row. And as he warned, this was a turnout election, that Kelly's entire campaign was accusing Janet Protasiewicz of not talking about the job of being a Supreme Court justice. She didn't speak about what it means to weigh case law and precedent. In the entirety of the millions upon millions upon millions of dollars that were spent on the race on Protasiewicz's behalf talked about abortion and abortion and abortion and abortion and abortion. And so you knew that an awful lot of people were going to turn out to vote on abortion, vote for Protasiewicz, vote against Kelly. One of the viral pieces of video here in Wisconsin from Tuesday's election day was video taken, and I forget which University of Wisconsin campus it was, but it was a nearly 2-hour-long line of young women all turning out to vote for Judge Janet. And as soon as those videos started to make the rounds, as soon as everybody saw just how many people really were turning out to vote, that became clear that Dan Kelly was skating uphill. He got 800,000 votes, better than 800,000 votes. That's more votes than he got when he ran for the Supreme Court last time. But Janet Protasiewicz got over 1 million votes. And again, this was an off-year April election that was not tied to a presidential primary. The turnout in these kinds of elections, usually maybe 10%. Here in Wisconsin on Tuesday, nearly 40% of people turned out. That is a record.
Let's just say you are not a liberal in Wisconsin. Was there any happy news?
The best news is there was a state Senate race in the Milwaukee suburbs, the 8th Senate district, if you're keeping the scorebook at home, the race to replace Alberta Darling. And the current state representative from Germantown in that district, Dan Knodel, ended up winning relatively easily. And it was a boom for Republicans for two reasons. One, it gives them a veto-proof majority in the state Senate. Now, there is no veto-proof majority in the state assembly, so Republicans cannot just simply ignore the governor. They have a bit more power, but not any more power that they're likely going to use. They could, in theory, impeach some of the governor's people. You may see some investigations into cabinet secretaries, but I don't think anyone is going to get bounced. More importantly, what the Knodel race shows is that Republicans are not completely outmatched yet in the Ozaukee County, Washington County, Waukesha County area, the so-called WOW counties. That district touches parts of Milwaukee County, Ozaukee County, Washington County, and Waukesha County. And you saw that area, you've seen that area over the past couple of years trend a little bit more blue. This race, where Knodel running as a Republican in a turnout election where 1 million something people voted for Janet Protasiewicz, that he was able to keep that seat for Republicans shows that there is good news. Republicans still have strength in the Milwaukee suburbs, but it also comes with that shot of bitters where, yeah, it was closer than it would have been 5 years ago, certainly than it would have been 10 years ago.
other things on the ballot seem to go in a conservative direction too. Am I correct in that?
Yeah, Wisconsin voters overwhelmingly, and I mean overwhelmingly, supported changes to the bail system. Nearly 70% of voters voted for the two questions to change the Constitution to allow judges to consider more things when setting bail. This is something that had been behind the scenes and being worked on for years. We first wrote about it in 2019 at the Center Square, but it really came into focus, really got some momentum after the low bail in the Waukesha Christmas Parade massacre case. There was also a surprisingly high number of people who voted to say, yes, we want folks on welfare to have to work. There was a non-binding advisory question about whether people who get public benefits should have to continue to work in order to cash in on those. And 80% of voters said yes. So while it was a huge turnout election for the liberals with Janet Protasiewicz, and there's real power in flipping the Wisconsin Supreme Court, when you're looking for silver linings, you can say, well, there's still a lot of voters in Wisconsin who support some of these conservative-leaning ideas.
Listeners can keep up with what happens after the election and more at thecentersquare.com. This is Bruce Walker, Great Lakes Regional Editor for the Center Square. Please subscribe and thank you for listening.